Hi folks, with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about scare campaigns, fear porn and this sort of thing, but look at some of the devices that are used to push this fear porn. Now, remember that in an open sort of media landscape, it would be very difficult to push this fear porn. Because you just wouldn't control the narrative or have enough control of the narrative to be able to get it across the line successfully. But because the globalists control 90% plus of the mainstream media, then they can really tell any lie they want and get away with it. And even if they do get exposed, and it's fairly rare that they do get enough exposure that they drop the matter, then that usually takes 2 or 3 days to permeate through, if you like, the information sort of network, so that by that stage, the headline-grabbing stories have moved on to the point where people aren't looking back to what happened 3 days ago. 3 days ago is an eternity ago, and it's the latest headline that's the issue. So because they not only have the capacity to control most of the media, but to actually move the frontline story of the moment forward, and they can just accelerate the amount of stories that come out and the prominence they give them in order to detract or deflect from their inability to get their lies and cheating treacheries up from a few days previous. That's a very important capacity they have there, and they know it, and they can. It means they can get away with a lot on the forehand and on the backhand as they move it along. I guess looking at some of the wherever they're pushing a lot of lies in order to control your behavior and to push the fear porn and the moral panic. Climate change is obviously a classic example of that, but there are others. For example, this idea that the globalists were pushing and using the media to do it, that white police officers were just randomly, for no reason at all, just randomly shooting black American citizens for, I don't know, the hell of it or something, but this was outrageously untrue. Absolutely untrue. And then to try and back it up, false, very false and very selective statistics were thrown around. So the intention, the absolute intention of the media and the globalist controlled media was to deceive and to create racial tension and racial divides and this sort of thing, which is again very much part of the globalist gig. In white countries, you create as much social, gender, racial and lifestyle division as you possibly can, and have everybody confused and sort of have their brains dulled by the shit. I just don't get all of this. And again, very much part of the globalist thing. But I wanted to talk about particularly talk about an element of fear porn, and I came across this quite recently where, and I'll come back to the the overall architecture of fear porn, but this was one where it was talking about climate change, and the method that they used in this was that hurricanes either 100% did not occur or 100% did occur. So they could count every hurricane as a unique destructive event caused by climate change, but on the backdrop assumption or the contextual assumption that there would never be a hurricane of any description if it wasn't for climate change, man-made climate change. So that was the thing. Now I noticed they're sort of using this sort of quite a lot. So the assumption is that say rapes, for example. That's a pandemic sort of thing that using that rapes would not occur. There would be zero rapes anywhere. Therefore, all rapes that occur are 100% aberration. So, hey, hold on a minute. In the black communities, the poorer black communities, and so on, which is where nearly all the rapes occur, since forever, and whether you look at it in Africa or in African societies or anywhere, there's a certain amount of those sort of just violence generally, and within that wider sort of subject or wider umbrella of violence, then you're going to find things like rapes in there. And so there's, if you like, a natural level that's in those sort of communities and societies, no matter what. So if you deduct that natural level away from, or that natural amount from the total, then you say, well, hold on a minute, there's actually not many rapes occur outside of that natural level. And if you look again at the hurricanes, the amount of hurricanes have actually declined. So if you're going to say hurricanes are caused by global warming, then there are fewer hurricanes. So therefore, global warming is not an issue. So they simply just dispense with the idea of, and they pretend or do their reporting in a way that suggests that any hurricane is a complete aberration because there should be no hurricanes. And that's a little sleight of hand trick that they use in a lot of areas. Now, when students to university, for example, rape on a university campus was so rare that it was almost not worth talking about. But when Arabic and Islamic students and black students, there was a big change away from really just whites only student in the white countries, then there was a lot more interaction between white girls wanting to experiment with black and brown guys on dates, that sort of stuff. So there was a lot more of these rapes. But on top of that, the definition of what constituted rape was expanded. So rape used to be rape, violence, threat of violence, intimidation, kidnapping somebody, tying them up, these sorts of things. That was what a rape was. But it's now, just grabbing on the arse, unwanted sexual attention falls into the greater category of rape, withdrawn consent. She had half a glass of wine too much. It's therefore rape because she couldn't properly legally consent. So you've got these vastly expanded definitions, which gives the artificial impression that the matter is getting out of control. It's never been worse. But in reality, they're just expanding the definition. So you could expand the definition and say, well, violent physical assault means saying hello to somebody or shaking their hand or patting them on the back or something. So as soon as you do that, then it's a violent physical assault, and therefore you can say violent physical assaults are going off the charts, and there are masses of them. We've got an epidemic. We have to clamp down on it. So these sort of things are what are used. But when you take out, in the fear porn, when you take out the lies, you take out the untruths, you take out the statistical lies that they're using, and if you also take out this natural level thing, now you can debate should we accept there's a natural level of murder or a natural level of rape or a natural level of this or that or hurricanes or well, you can debate that or the morals of it, where it's particularly where it's direct human behavior on the spot. But the reality is that sort of behavior has been in existence for all time. The idea that you can control it because you've got a couple of lesbian school teachers finger wagging you, that's a separate matter. And you can argue, well, that's not going to work. That's not going to change human behavior and so on. But the intent of these people is to find and to create fear porn type situations. And that's their intent. So they'll keep on going with whatever propaganda is required to say, well, look how terrible things are. Everything has to change. Look how bad it all is. We have to introduce special laws. And we're finding, say, in the case of rape, that men are being dragged into court on particularly white men, being dragged into court on micro technicalities. Did she have 2 glasses of wine or 2.5 glasses of wine? And the whole case will swing around that half glass of wine, because the micro technicality is if she had that half glass of wine extra, then that means she couldn't legally give consent. So even though she did give consent, her consent has no legal standing, therefore it becomes rape. And those sort of escalating, where A escalates to B, which escalates to C, and if it then escalates to D, D means you're the fucking murderer. So, that type of thing where there is actually no crime that's taken place. But due to micro technicalities of interpretation, they're using those sort of micro technicality methodologies against Trump in Georgia at the moment as an example. Those type of things are increasingly used, within the legal system to go after white people. You know, it's really said in going after anyone else. It's white, straight white middle class males are the target for this. Then being, the straight white middle class male being the biggest obstacle, as the globalists would see it, to them implementing their worldwide domination. So, but I just wanted to touch on that, because this idea that hurricanes 100% occur, 100% don't occur, and that becomes the yardstick or the measuring stick for determining the severity of hurricanes and so on, then, or anything else, again, could be the number of rapes or could be the number of murders. For example, any society has a minimum number of murders. Now, the more homogenous society and more orderly the society, the lower number of the murders. The less homogenous, the less organised, and so on, then the greater the number of murders. So there's a natural level of murders that occur, as in an average over a year. And so really it's above or below that average that become the issue. Nor can you recast these things. Well, murder now is spitting on the sidewalk. Look at all the murders have increased. So the redefinition, which is very disingenuous. But we need to look, whenever we see scare porn, fear porn, those sorts of things, we need to look at those methodologies, which isn't easy, and sometimes it takes a bit of time. But particularly what stuck out is in climate change, how they use this 100% hurricanes, 100% not, and 100% the Great Barrier Reef in Australia is bleached 100% not, or they'll pick some little corner of the reef that was in the middle of some sort of storm or something like that, and say, oh, look, the reef's dying, when really they're only looking at a few square meters of it or something like that. So these are always issues to consider when you see and hear about this sort of disaster type fear porn. You're being a Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for listening.